Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video I'm going to be comparing this BMW 3 Series to this Genesis G70 to see if Genesis has beat BMW at their own game. Before we get into this video though, a huge shout out and thank you to the Genesis of Linden and the BMW of Pleasant Grove for giving me some time with both of the cars. I'm going to include a link to both of the dealerships' inventories in the description down below so you can check out what they have currently. If you don't know, both of those dealerships never charge over MSRP, so if you want a great deal on a Genesis or a great deal on a BMW, reach out to them. And then on a side note, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get into it. So under the hood of the 3 Series, we have a turbocharged 3-liter inline-6 that goes through an 8-speed automatic transmission. Fuel economy is 23 around town and then 32 on the highway, with power outputs being 382 horsepower and then 369 pound-feet of torque. Now under the hood of the Genesis, we have a twin-turbo 3.3-liter V6 that goes through an 8-speed automatic transmission. Fuel economy is 17 around town and then 26 on the highway, with power outputs being 365 horsepower and then 376 pound-feet of torque. Now before we go over the front ends, I do want to mention if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Starting with the bright red BMW 3 Series, you guys can see distinctive lines there on the hood. This one has the anniversary emblems, which look really cool. Notice how everything's like blacked out on the front end, and I think the lights, like they just have this aggressive appearance, and this has a normal sized kidney front grille. Comparing that to the Genesis, notice how with the Genesis, everything's kind of more flowy with the lines, so that makes sense, a little bit more rounded off. And then you've got the pretty interesting looking headlights there with the daytime running lights. I'm actually a big fan. And then look how big the grille is. They've actually beat BMW when it comes to grille size. I mean, look at that. Now, tire and wheel setup with the BMW is 225/40/19 here on the front. And then with the Genesis, 225/40/19 on the front as well. However, on the rear, the Genesis tire and wheel setup is 255/35/19, whereas the BMW is 225/40/19 again. Now, some other interesting stuff. You guys can see here with the BMW fender how it's kind of like more angular, whereas with the Genesis, it's more rounded off. And then you can see the difference with the mirrors. Notice with the BMW one, it's all blacked out. And then they both have body painted door handles here. And again, notice the difference with the sides. This is interesting. So with the BMW, the lines are a little bit softer, whereas with the Genesis, it's a little bit sharper there with the lines. But anyways, here's your full side view on the Genesis. And then here's your full side view on the BMW. Now, when it comes to key fobs, they couldn't be more different in my opinion. Well, first off, shape, right? But notice with the BMW, you just have the opening there for the trunk, whereas with the Genesis, you can also remote start it, and then you can also turn on the lights as well. Now, popping into the cargo area with the Genesis, it's actually quite spacious indeed. And I do want to mention that this automatically pops all the way up when you press the popper button. And then taking a look at the BMW 3 Series, it looks like it's about the same. The Genesis trunk might be a little bit deeper, but same thing here with the trunk, it just pops all the way. Now, when it comes to rear style here with the Genesis, again, you've got the taillights that are kind of similar to the headlights with the overall design. And of course, our 3.3T badge there. And then you can see the parking sensors at the bottom. And then I love the covers there for the exhaust tips. They're pretty interesting looking. And then comparing that to the 3 Series, which again, it seems like it's a little bit more angular with the design, especially look at the taillights there. Notice the shape. Then of course, you got all of our blacked out badges, and then look at the covers for the exhaust tips on the 3 Series. Pretty aggressive. But let me know which rear end you like the look of more. Popping inside of the Genesis, you guys can see here with the material use inside, and look at the stitching as well. I think it's really cool design. And then look at these seats, like the red stitching and the red seat belt. And then let's quickly see what space is like in here. So there's your leg room. Looks like I've got some vents, a charging port. This is to move that seat, which is pretty cool. And then here's the headroom back here. And of course, we got a cup holder armrest. And comparing that to the BMW, you guys can see normal BMW fashion, everything's just like all blacked out pretty much. And then here are the seats. You can see down below, and then popping in, legroom's honestly pretty much the same. Got like our own little climate zone back here, some vents, USB action. And then, yeah, headroom's about the same as well, so pretty similar in terms of dimensions. A little bit more engineered though with the cup holder, or should we say over-engineered also. I quit. And then popping to the front of the Genesis, I like this, how it goes across. And then again, you see with like the red stitching, and then that's pretty cool, like the material use. Look at all the controls here for like the windows and the mirror adjustment, everything. That looks very nice. You got memory seats, blind spot monitor with the mirrors. And then here are the front seats. It's gonna get that same cool stitching design. And then popping in, ooh, first off, look at the pedals. Start her up. Fancy. See how this sounds? Nice. So the steering wheel itself, let's actually give you guys a better view. Perforated on the side, you've got red stitching in the center, paddle shifters in the back. It's got adaptive cruise control, it's got steering assist. You can see the stalks there in the back. And then here's the gauge cluster. So you can see that it's got like the analog gauge on the one side and then digital here on the other side. And then the cool thing here, you got a bunch of different drive modes that you can go through here, even Sport Plus. That's definitely fun. And then if we pop it into reverse, we've got, well, tons of glare. We just have a regular backup camera with this particular one, but resolution's pretty solid with that. As for the rest of the infotainment system, it's not massive, but response time is absolutely fantastic with it. It's easy to use. And then I do like the red stitching here on the dash. And then it's actually different with the material use. Like, look how it's got like cowhide texture on the dash, and then down below it's like the smooth texture. Anyways, we got our dual zone climate controls. We have heated seats, heated steering wheel. We've got air conditioned seats as well. And then you guys can see here with our little charging port here, wireless phone charging pad. And then here's our shifter for the 8-speed automatic. Drive mode select, then you guys can see the controls here, again, the finish on them. Even the cup holders, that looks nice. And look at the center console here. Good storage, got a USB there. And then you can see sunglass holder. And then here's the sunroof. It's not panoramic. I'd say this is just like a regular in terms of the overall size. And then popping over to the BMW, you can see here the front door panel, it's identical to the rear pretty much. Here's all of like your window controls, mirror adjustment. You got memory seat functionality, blind spot monitoring. And here's the front seat, as you can see. And then the pedals down below. And then pop in, see how this sounds? Nice. And then stop start buttons down here. Ooh. So here's the steering wheel. You can see the paddle shifters there on the back. Just like the Genesis, you've got adaptive cruise control with steering assist. And then this has a full digital gauge cluster. And notice it gets red and aggressive when we change it into sport mode, which is pretty cool. It actually like changes the whole gauge cluster. Let me know which cluster you like more. And then popping it into reverse, you guys can see this one actually has a 360 camera system here. Trajectory lines do turn with the steering wheel. And then as for the rest of the infotainment system, this is BMW's new Hyperscreen. That's what they call it. Okay, I understand. Response time with it is great. Obviously this one's bigger than the screen over there in the Genesis. But I feel like, in terms of overall function, it responds about the same. And, they're both pretty user-friendly overall. And then I do like this trim that goes across. And then you got like the cowhide texture on the dash, just like the Genesis. And your radio controls down below. Got a little bit more storage here with the wireless phone charging pad. And then analog control for the infotainment system if you don't want to use touchscreen. We've got a weird gear selector set up here in the BMW. And then a bunch of analog controls, the big ones here, drive modes, right? And then your center console, nicely padded, pretty normal glove box. And then this sunroof's actually bigger in the BMW, slightly. Still not panoramic, but it's bigger. And then we do have the control for it right there. Now I want you to guess in the comment section down below the price difference between these two vehicles. I'll wait for it, please guess. And well, the Genesis stickers for $53,000 and this BMW has equipped stickers for $70,000. So setting off in the G70 with our cool red seatbelts, right? And this is gonna be interesting driving these both back to back, because if you don't know, what Genesis basically, did with their, newly redesigned cars is they took cars that they liked in the luxury car world and then, took the things that they liked out of those cars and basically, put those in their cars. You could call it copying, or you could call it appreciation of greatness. That's what I'm gonna, that's what I'm gonna refer to it as. I don't think it's a bad thing, honestly, because then it just leads to more competition with automakers, and it leads to us as, consumers just getting better cars overall. First thing I want to mention, this engine's so torquey. Oh, this thing's fun. Suspension's really comfortable as well. Brakes are pretty good. Be interesting to see the braking difference between the BMW and the Genesis. Let's pop it into the Sport Plus mode here. This thing handles really well. I had one of these for a week and it was an absolute blast. Like, this thing drives like a super fun sports car. Oh man, it's so torquey. And the transmission, boy oh boy, is it responsive. Yeah, this is such a good like sports sedan. Genesis has absolutely knocked it out of the park with this, let me tell you. Okay, so we're continuing along here with the Genesis. I will say this is kind of like a bumpier road, and this shows me just how good the suspension damping is with the Genesis. They've done a really good job with this car. Again, it's comfortable. The seats are comfortable. The suspension's really good. Yeah, they did a fantastic job with this overall, that is for sure. It's very apparent. I do hate the fact that it went on manual mode there though. It's so fast, my goodness, man, you could definitely get into some trouble with this car. So summing things up here with the G70 driving before we pop into the 3 Series, the suspension damping's great, the handling's great. The only thing I can knock this car for is the brakes are good, but it does feel like they could be a little bit better, but this is a Sport Advanced, so that is something to take into account. But let's pop into the 3 Series. Okay, so setting off in the 3 Series, I will say with the performance exhaust from BMW, from the factory that this has, it sounds pretty crazy. It's pretty obnoxious, to be honest, which I like. I think that's definitely a good thing. But I will say, like, I'm surprised at how similar these cars drive, honestly. Like, it's shocking how similar they drive. Like I said, it looks like Genesis was copying someone's homework. It's a little bit, which I don't think is a bad thing. Like I said, I think competition's always the best for us. Now, I will say, seat comfort's pretty similar with both of these. The bolstering is a little bit different. It seems like on the Genesis, the bolstering might have been a little bit like tighter, if that makes sense, compared to the BMW. It feels like it's a little bit more open. I do like the sound of this more. That's just my personal opinion. Let me know if you like the V6 sound more, if you like this inline 6. But this is definitely like a nice, like, throaty powertrain. So we're gonna pop it into the Sport Plus setting here. The handling's also very similar. Again, they drive a lot more similar than they drive different. Yeah, the transmission too is very responsive, just like the Genesis. Now we're gonna be taking a slightly different driving route here with the BMW. I think you guys might like this driving route a little bit more, but it's just because we're going on our way back to the BMW dealership. Let's pop into, there we go, S mode. So both of them have really responsive transmissions, but what I will say is I think that this inline 6 is a little bit happier to rev up and down compared to the V6. It seems like it's a little bit more free revving. Super punchy. It's a different feel. The Genesis has like more of like a torque punch. This feels more like you feel like you're getting a little bit like, and look at the horsepower and torque figures, it makes sense. This feels like you're getting more on like the top end side of things. Like the Genesis, it's just like a very hard shove right out of the gate. And well, speaking of hard shoves, man, this thing is quick. It sounds great too while you're doing it. Yeah, the exhaust does like little burbles and everything. Man, this performance exhaust is exciting. I will say, both of them have really good damping. It's hard to pick a winner with them. I will say the BMWs, it does feel a little bit tighter. And same thing with the braking. The braking feels a bit tighter than the Genesis, and so that'll give me summing things up here. So here's kind of my impression is the Genesis is like 90% of the way there with what this car is in terms of performance. Now, when it comes to interior, I think some of you will prefer this, you know, screen layout versus the Genesis. Some of you will prefer the Genesis layout. But in terms of like material use and feel and everything, they're both pretty similar. They both feel high quality. They both feel really well built for the, you know, again, the segment that they compete in. But, you know, there is a big price difference. And what I have to say is, like I said, the Genesis gives you like 95% of what this has, but it's at a much more affordable price. Now, this obviously has some options that jump up the price quite a bit, like the exhaust, for example, which is like $2,000 or something like that. So you could get one of these for a bit less money, but I mean, still, you're probably gonna be over $60,000 for an M340i. And so, you know, with the BMW, I think what I'd have to say is you're paying, the extra money goes into the suspension's a little bit tighter, the braking's a little bit tighter, and then the exhaust note, definitely love that. But let me know which one you'd pick. I don't think you can go wrong in the situation. They're so similar.